crisis, it has to be an all-government approach and all-community approach.
South Africa classifies gender-based violence and femicide a national disaster. And vote counting is underway in Guinea-Bissau after elections on Sunday. But first up, the news with Onele Nzinzi and our sports headlines with Msibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African perspective.
I thank you, Lulu, and greetings to our listeners. The scourge of gender-based violence has been thrust into the spotlight thanks to a nationwide protest by the Women for Change SA. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa says he'll meet with the Intergovernmental Committee on Disaster Management to discuss solutions to ending GBVF. On Friday, President Cyril Ramaphosa declared the GBVF a national disaster following the women's protests. Hlabisa says the meeting will focus on strengthening support for existing response structures.
The classification firstly allows all departments and all provinces and municipalities to revisit their existing budget and review where they can review to make resources available to deal with the crisis on hand. This afternoon, we will be activating the Intergovernmental Committee, and by the end of this week, we are going to get feedback as to how are they going to respond in terms of the available resources.
Criminologist, global security consultant and lecturer at Caleb University in Lagos, Nigeria, Dr. Diele Aigbe says the kidnapped school children may be used as a shield against a possible United States attack. 50 of the kidnapped children have since been reunited with their families. A major military-led search and rescue operation is now underway for the remaining 265 children and 12 teachers who were taken with them. Aigbe Mame explains.
The intelligence have gotten that it seems they want to use the children, the adopted children, as a shield in case of any U.S. attack, So they tend to be more proactive. I think the security agency should be able to mop up those 50 students that escaped and able to get intelligence from them.
South Africa's National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Patohi, has resumed her testimony before the Nkabinde inquiry in Pretoria. This follows delays last week. Patohi is the main witness in the inquiry, which is looking into South Gauteng Public Prosecutions boss, Advocate Andrew Chauke's fitness to hold office. Chauke is accused of making questionable prosecutorial decisions. They include failing to prosecute politically connected people. A new witness is expected to be called in the former Bafana Captain Senzo Mayiwa's murder trial in the High Court in Pretoria today. This after Absalom Zungu, the second witness that the defense had called, concluded his testimony last week. Zungu is the father of state key witness Constable Sizwe Zungu, whose placed all 5 accused at a hotel in Vosloorus on the day of Mayiwa's killing. 5 men are on trial for the murder of Mayiwa in October 2014. Kelvin Mabasa reports.
The state maintains Absalom Zungu's statement, disposed in November 2019, changed the course of investigations implicating accused 1 Muzi Sibia and accused 2 Bongani Ntanzi. But Zungu maintains he never made any statement that implicated anyone and went further, accusing the court of corruption. Constable Zungu, who previously took the stand, placed all 5 accused in Vosloorus on the day of Mayiwa's killing. It is not clear who the defense will call as their third witness. Calvin Mabasa, SABC News.
And lastly, an attack on security headquarters in the northwestern Pakistan city of Peshawar has killed 3 military personnel and wounded several others. The compound houses the Federal Constabulary Paramilitary Forces, the BBC's Caroline Davis.
Witnesses told local media they heard two loud explosions around 8:10 on Monday morning. Rescue teams are at the site and a local hospital said 5 people with minor injuries had been brought in. 2 police officials have told the BBC the attack was carried out by 2 suicide bombers. One official said 5 soldiers and 7 civilians were injured. This is a highly secure and sensitive area in Peshawar. To enter the complex would require breaching multiple levels of security.
Channel Africa News, I am Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, a mixed bag of results from this weekend's CAF Inter-Club competitions and the Proteas in firm control against India on day 3 of the second test. Details of these and other stories coming up at 12:30.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Onele Ntsinzi with our news update and brother Msibudi Makura with our sports headlines. It is 12:06 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Updates and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Well, today on hashtag Africa Update Us, in the absence of America, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa passed on the G20 leadership baton to an empty chair on the last day of the G20 Leaders Summit. Now, our question to you today is, what is your reaction to the US President snubbing Africa and South Africa by not attending the summit? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:08 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. We go to Guinea-Bissau where vote counting is underway in that country following a presidential and legislative election. Incumbent President Umaro Sissoco Embalo is in a tight contest to become the first leader in 3 decades to win a second consecutive term in the West African nation. Now, the 53-year-old former army general is up against 11 other candidates. Analysts are predicting a close race and a runoff will be held if no candidate gets more than 50% of the vote. And to unpack this further, we are joined on the line by Professor Georgiou Dieng from the Laboratory of African and Post-Colonial Studies at Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar, Senegal. Now, Professor, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you for having me on your program.
Now, Prof, what does this election mean for the country and the region?
Well, as you know, Guinea-Bissau is a special country. It has been experiencing a lot of problems, especially instability, since its independence, 9 coups d'etats. That means that the country is not a stable one. So this election might lead to more stability and more democracy. But I believe that that will not be easy for the outgoing president.
Now, Prof, you've called on the citizens to accept the outcome of the election. Why is this important?
This is important because in Africa, in general, the days following elections are always marked by violence. The loser never accepts. That can be understood because many of the elections are rigged. But sometimes we have fair elections and people refuse to accept the results. And this is the reason why it's important for Guineans to accept the results, because I saw the voting yesterday, but and on the whole, it was a peaceful election. So the results can be considered to be fair, fairly obtained by the winner or the loser, and the loser must accept, and the opponents also must accept. The people must accept, because Guinea-Bissau has got to understand that violence is not something that can lead the country to peace and development.
Now, just looking at the leading candidates, including the incumbent president, they're fairly young, compared with other African countries. How does this hold Guinea-Bissau in good standing?
Well, I mean, because the situation is what it is. It stands as it is today because the outgoing president has succeeded or has used the judiciary to discard, to reject the candidacy of the most outstanding opponent, that is to say, the leader of the party which led Guinea-Bissau to independence. So he is candidate, and then newcomer, an almost newcomer, Fernando Diaz da Costa, is now his main opponent. And he, I believe, did not expect this to happen. So they are two young leaders, 53 for the outgoing president and 47 for his opponent. And I believe that this is something good for the country, but it is also good for Africa and West Africa especially. But we have got to be careful, because it's not because you have young leaders that you can achieve development or unity.
Now, if no candidate gets more than 50% of the vote, it then goes to a runoff. What impact will this have?
Well, I mean, that will show that at least the election was not rigged. That is the first lesson we have got to learn from a runoff, if it exists. The other advantage is it can also lead to more violence, because the first round was marked by peace. People went out and cast their vote peacefully, but violence might be present if there is a runoff. In the same way as if the outgoing president wins at the first round of election, that can also lead to violence. So we really asking the people of Guinea-Bissau to be peaceful, to understand that it is simply an election, and there will be a winner and a loser, and the loser has got to accept the result of the election, because I believe that the National Electoral Commission is rather doing a good job so far.
And Prof, the main opposition party was barred from fielding its own candidates, and analysts are predicting a close race between Mbalo and 47-year-old Diaz da Costa. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I believe that it is not fair to reject any candidate, especially accusing the party of having filed its papers too late, discarding this outstanding party which led the country to independence in 1974. I consider this to be terrible, because It is as if the cake is being taken from the mouth of the ones who has got to eat it. But in any case, we have got to understand that the law is the law. Maybe they made a mistake, but the discarding of this outstanding leader is something that somehow mars the quality of the vote.
Well, Prof, thank you for joining us on Africa Update. We are going to leave it there for today.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me on your program.
It's been a pleasure. That was Professor Giorgio Dieng from the Laboratory of African and Post-Colonial Studies at Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar, Senegal, joining us on the line.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 17 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our protesters took to the streets of Tunis this past weekend, protesting against what they say is injustice and repression. Our protesters accuse President Kais Saied of cementing a one-man rule by using the judiciary and police. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line by Professor Laïd Zakhlami from the University of Algiers. Prof, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon to you, and happy to have you on the show.
Now, Prof, it would seem that Tunisians are now becoming more frustrated with the way President Saied is running the country. Are they correct in their frustration, or is there something else at work here?
Well, I would say, frankly speaking, although he was elected democratically in 2019, and since that he was taking so many measures, what he seems to him reasonable, but what the critics and the detractors qualify as unfair, and they were protesting, as you said last weekend, according to Al Jazeera source, as against the injustice. And they describe his regime as autocratic, but they were about 2,000 protesters in Tunis capital. But frankly speaking, is not so great number. But overall, the situation is for Kais Saied, what he claims to cleansing what he called the traitor within the state, and this is from his statement, what he described the people who are contesting or protesting his authority.
Now, the protest action this weekend involved journalists, doctors, bankers and banks, and even public transport systems. We also understand that journalists are fearful of what they report, as it would seem that many are arrested and detained. Should one be surprised to see such sectors also responding?
That's true. I mean, when we look at the figures and when we look at international organization in charge of freedom of the press, they put Tunisia about 50 out of 100. The ranking of press freedom in Tunisia is more or less okay, 50%, 50 according to out of 180 or something like that. It's fair. But overall, as I said, there is a lot of anger and protest within the economic and the social situation, besides the way Kais Saied is running the country. country, and they thought he is, they think, I would say, the protesters think he is running his country in a very autocratic manner. Of course, we have the elite is protesting. What he did for the last couple of years since he took power, he was, as I said, elected. He was siding, I would say, all those from the Nahda, which is Islamic party, and now he is about to have a strong grip on his grip of his authority on the state. Of course, many people complain, but as I said to you, he has, I would say, he was on the street a few days ago, and he has having these people coming to you on the street. It looks like we have a margin of people who are protesting against his policy, but overall, Tunisian people, that's my impression, maybe I am wrong, that's my impression, that the people, overall people are more or less happy with the return to what they call a strong Tunisian country, although we have in Tunisia was a country which has 2011 what they call the Arab Spring, and so many people complain that that principle, the ideals of Arab Spring is fading away.
Now, Prof, could we see a change of position by the citizens of Tunisia? You mentioned and highlight something very key, that Tunisia is basically where it all started with the upspring. Seeing that there has also been a crackdown on rights groups in the country, could this be the time where we see the citizens of Tunisia on the ground continuously and calling for change?
Yes, for sure. Right now we have on the Tunisian television, we have now within the parliament, there is a lot of debate over all these issues. And ahead of the next election, I am sure people will express themselves in legal term, in a legal way through election. So it's too early to say that, to anticipate. But I would say the indication to respond to your question is during the election, which will be held shortly, and then afterwards, everyone has the right to express himself, as long as the condition for a free election are, of course, are maintained and are protected.
Prof, thank you for joining us on Africa Update. We are going to leave it there for today.
Thank you very much.
That's Professor Laïd Zakhlami from the University of Algiers joining us on the line. It is 23 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Now, in the absence of America, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa passed on the G20 leadership baton to an empty chair on the last day of the G20 Leaders Summit. Accordingly, South African officials are expected to hand over the 2025 G20 declarations to a U.S. embassy official this week. Our President Ramaphosa said South Africa used its presidency to gather developed and developing countries to place the priorities of Africa and the global south at the heart of the G20 agenda. Our climate change, mobilizing finance for a just energy transition, and taking action to ensure debt sustainability for low-income countries were amongst the resolutions contained in the declaration adopted by member states at the start of the summit. Ndebo Mukobo attended the G20 Leaders Summit.
I now say that this gavel of this G20 summit formally closes this summit and now moves on to the next president of the G20, which is the United States, where we shall see each other again next year. The summit is therefore closed.
And this marks the end of South Africa's G20 presidency, albeit without the customary pomp and ceremony. The wooden gavel would normally be handed over to the leader of the next country to hold the rotating presidency, in this case the United States. Due to differences with Pretoria over climate change inclusion on the agenda and fake claims about a white genocide, Washington decided not to attend the historic gathering, the first ever G20 leader summit on the African continent. And in his closing remarks, President Cyril Ramaphosa emphasized that prosperity begins in the cradle of humankind.
The greatest opportunity for prosperity in the 21st century lies in Africa. Harnessing that opportunity will require a rather strong partnership between Africa and the G20, and indeed between Africa and the rest of the world. Recognizing our interconnectedness as a global community of nations, we have called for an end to conflicts and wars around the globe and for a just and comprehensive and lasting peace.
The G20 Leaders Summit in Africa will be remembered as not just a mere talk shop, but a partnership amongst G20 nations to change the lives of the poor and the most vulnerable, as Ramaphosa explains.
The G20 South Africa Summit Leaders Declaration is more than words. It is a commitment to concrete actions that will improve the lives of people in every part of the world. Our agreement on a declaration during this summit demonstrates the value of the G20 as a forum that can facilitate joint action on issues of shared concern. More than that, it reaffirms our renewed commitment to multilateral cooperation and our recognition that our shared goals outweigh our differences.
With African countries adversely affected by global greenhouse gas emissions, President Ramaphosa says South Africa's G20 presidency has made progress in mobilizing finance for the just energy transition, insisting that climate-related disasters affect all countries, with the heaviest toll on poor African countries in the global south.
In this regard, South Africa introduced the high-level voluntary principles for investing in disaster risk reduction and encouraged international collaboration to strengthen investment in preventing and responding to disasters. Climate change touches every nation, but it impacts on everyone unevenly. That is why we have together pledged to increase the quality and the quantity of climate finance to developing economies, to strengthen multilateral development banks, and to unlock private capital.
President Cyril Ramaphosa also implored the other G20 partners to act with speed to ensure that the declarations and the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals come to fruition. I am Tebo Mokobo in Johannesburg.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa. Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update, only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is 29 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459. Our news headlines up next with Onelin Sinzi.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Vote counting has gotten underway in Guinea-Bissau following presidential and legislative elections. Incumbent President Umaro Embalo is in a tight contest to become the first leader in 3 decades to win a second consecutive term in the West African nation. Leaders of the European Union and the African member states are meeting in Luanda, Angola for the 7th EU-AU summit under the theme Promoting Peace and Prosperity Through Effective Multilateralism. The summit is marking 25 years of EU-AU partnership as well as 50 years of independence for Angola and several other African countries. And the Kremlin says that it had not received any official information about the outcome of the Ukraine peace talks held on Sunday in Geneva. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Mtsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Musibudi Makura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. So Miga Gadoso, the head coach of the South African football side Mamelodi Sundowns, says his side is inching ever so closer to the fluid, cohesive unity envisioned now that they've shaken off a sluggish start to the 2025-2026 season. Now the Brazilians open their CAF Champions League group stage campaign with a polished 3-1 victory over the DRC side Saint Elulu on Saturday, a result that also served notice to pool rivals MC Alger as well as Al Hilal ahead of the looming clashes. Now, midfielder Nuno Santos bagged a brace with Marcelo Allende also finding the back of the net for Mamelodi Sundowns. Garoso also described it as a clear step toward now the high tempo rhythm he expects from his team.
I don't like to individualize too much the performances because I think that we have inside the club players that indeed could rise and not substitute, because we don't expect to substitute no one, but bring quality. Basically, we coaches depend on quality. When we have, it's more easy. When you don't have, it's more difficult. And unfortunately, this season we've been suffering difficult times because we have so much lack of players by the fact that they get injured and.
Now, Sundowns were stunned by AS Manema Union in their group stage opener last season, and Gadoso highlighted the significance of winning this time around.
I think it's obviously very important to start a group stage with a victory. We all remember that last year when I arrived here, there were 2 matches played and 1 point, and it's tough then when you lose matches against teams that theoretically you have to win, especially at home. Those lack of points can hunt you a little bit throughout all the competition, and it happened last year. I expect a very, very tough group. It's a group that the way matches, all of them will be very tough. We saw yesterday the match that we saw.
On to this now. Stellenbosch FC got their CAF Confederation Cup campaign off to a winning start with a gritty 1-0 victory over Otono at the new Pitamogaba Stadium in the Limpopo province yesterday. Just as the game looked destined for a goalless draw, second-half substitute Ashley Cupido struck late to secure maximum points for the home side. Now the match began at a cautious pace with both teams settling into possession very early on. Otoho grew in the contest around the half-hour mark, breaching the Stellies backline but also failing to convert. Stellenbosch FC absorbed the pressure and in the end, Cupido's decisive finish ensured the perfect start to the Group C campaign. Well, former Super Eagles midfielder Duke Udi has delivered a brutally honest assessment of Nigeria's World Cup heartbreak. Udi insists that even winning the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco next month will not erase the crushing disappointment of missing football's biggest tournament for a second time in a row. Udi says that the World Cup remains the highest stage any national team can aspire to, and no continental success can replace that prestige, exposure and global significance of appearing at a tournament of that magnitude.
It's not a new kid to Nigeria. We won it 3 times. So it got like, would use the outcome to at least see more players, because what I saw now, what I expected, because as soon as, like I said, as Osimhen left the game, there was nothing up front again. Even the guy I thought we have a good bench. I thought we have a good bench. They came in. They did not do anything. They were just kicking the ball. If you look at the Congolese team, they were a team, playing like a team, passing the ball from the defense line to the attacking top. So for me, the better team won. So the outcome is not my, seeing your country not going for 2 World Cups is so painful.
Right, and finally in live cricket action at the moment, the South African side, the Proteas, in firm control following day 3 of the second test between South Africa as well as India. At the moment, it stamps on day 3, South Africa on 26 for the loss of no wicket. This after adding to their points tally. In the first innings, they got to 489 all out at the end of day 2's proceedings yesterday. In reply, India were bowled out for 201 runs earlier on today, meaning South Africa now lead this series by 314 runs at the end of day 3. The action continuing tomorrow on day 4 of the second test between South Africa as well as India. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us as well on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. With gratitude for the voices, the rhythm, and the dreams that unite us all.
Roho ya Afrika inaishi katika kila hadithi tunayosimulia.
Each new day is a gift, a reminder to pause, to breathe, and to give thanks for the laughter we share and the journeys we take and the stories that shape who we are.
Cada nascer do sol, lembre-te algo pelo qual ser grato.
La vie est un voyage, parcourons-la avec gratitude.
Channel Africa. Celebrate the beauty of life with gratitude for the voices, the rhythms, and the dreams that unite us all. This is Africa with Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Business news on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
With your business news at this hour, I'm Matapala Mahabe. Good afternoon. Starting off with the story, the South African Parliament Standing Committee on Appropriations has written to Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana seeking clarity on the cost of hosting the G20 Leaders Summit. The committee's chairperson, Musi Maimane, says the committee has a constitutional obligation to monitor public spending and ensure that public funds are used appropriately. The summit concluded yesterday with a joint declaration committing to multilateral cooperation. Maimane says South Africa's history of inflating procurement cost when hosting events of such magnitude is what prompted the action.
So the follow-up question then becomes, have you been able to spend within that envelope or beyond that envelope? Because the budget pronouncements need to remain integrous, because the last place you want to be as a budgeting process is to pronounce that you are going to spend 600 million rands on something, and then later you come back and you say it was over 1 billion rands or 2 billion rands, because what that means is that there's lack of integrity in the budgeting process.
And the biggest obstacles for farmers in South Africa who try to sustain food security are climate change, arid soil conditions, scarcity of water, and a general lack of resources. According to a smallholder farmer in Bloemfontein, Free State Province, these conditions limit the farmer to produce at full capacity. As the G20 summit wrapped up yesterday, he begged members of government to also ensure the trade policies consider smallholder farmers. African Farmers Association of South Africa's Mangawung chairperson is Mike Magwa.
I would love them to assist the smallholder farmers because they are the major role players in terms of food security. If they can assist in terms of equipping the smallholder farmers, in terms of changing the policies which are going to suit the smallholder farmers so that they can be able to be the role players also in the industry.
The World Bank has lifted Kenya's economic growth forecast for this year to almost 5% today, citing a pickup in the construction sector in East Africa's largest economy. The bank says some of Kenya's main industries, like construction, suffered last year, partly as concerns mounted about the government's finances, but the trend has begun to reverse. A new report on Kenya's economy says signs of recovery are emerging and that the rebound in construction in the first half of 2025 had offset a slowdown in manufacturing. The result is that the economy is now projected to grow by 4.9% this year, up from the World Bank's May forecast of 4.5%, and maintain that rate of growth over the next 2 years. And Tanzania says it will start construction of a new port in the east of the country, ending a decade of delays due to government objections to the initial contract terms agreed with foreign developers. Bagamoyo Port, a part of the larger-scale Special Economic Zone initiative involving industrial parks and rail and road links, is located about 75 kilometers north of the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. The chief government spokesperson, Gerson Msigwa, says the port will have 28 berths, but construction will start on 14 initially. And China pitched stronger ties in its highest level talks with Germany's new government as Beijing's top European trade partner seeks to smooth tensions over rare earth curbs that have choked German production lines and prompted calls for de-risking. Beijing has staged an uncharacteristically swift turnaround in relations with Berlin since discord over Chinese export curbs on chips and rare earth resulted in German Foreign Minister Johanna Wadepool cancelling an October trip to China. A meeting between the two had appeared unlikely only months earlier, but with both countries embroiled in the fallout from a US-China trade war and searching for ways to diversify from world's top consumer markets. A look at your financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 450. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 30. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 66, and in Zambia, it's 22 kwacha 93. $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 40. Russia is 79 rubles 3. India, it's 89 rupees 60. China, it's 7 yuan 10, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 36 cents. $1 is trading at 76 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,065 and platinum at $1,545 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $62.26 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapela Mahape.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Well, thank you to Matapelo Mahape with our business news. It is 12:43 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our South Africa's Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velenkosini Hlabisa, has welcomed the decision to classify gender-based violence and femicide as a national disaster. The National Disaster Management Centre concluded that GBV meets the threshold of a potential disaster, citing persistent and immediate life safety risks. The classification calls on all government departments to strengthen support for existing response structures and implement contingency arrangements to manage the disaster. Our Minister Hlabisa elaborates on the expected timeline for implementing the multi-sectoral prevention, mitigation, relief and rehabilitation plans and how progress will be tracked.
The timelines was with effect from the classification, which was officially done on Friday. And today I am going to activate the Interdepartmental Committee on Disaster Management, which combines various departments, and we will cascade the activation to provinces and local municipalities because if we are to bring an end to this crisis, it has to be an all-government approach and all-community approach. All stakeholders must come on board, and we take a war against gender-based violence and femicide. The classification, firstly, it allows all departments and all provinces and municipalities to revisit their existing budget and review where they can review to make resources available to deal with the crisis on hand. And by the end of this week, we are going to get a feedback from the departments as to how are they going to respond in terms of the available resources in their budgets. As it was classified on Friday, I would request that we be given some time so that the government can be able to respond properly in terms of the allocation of resources.
That was South Africa's Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velenkosini Hlabisa. It is 12:46 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Controversies continue to plague South Africa's higher education system as the year comes to an end, as many matriculants look to furthering their studies at higher education institutions next year. A major problem is that public universities are not able to absorb the growing demand. Eduvos, a private higher education institution, has released a white paper and accompanying positioning paper that packs this. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Dr. Rian Steenberg, Eduvos Executive Director. Dr. Steenberg, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you, Lulu, and such a pleasure to be here.
Now, just let's start with some of the issues facing higher education in South Africa. What is the biggest challenge?
Really, I think the biggest challenge is that the system isn't designed to cater for everybody that can have access at a time when we really need to ask what is the system serving, and if we're going to unlock our development goals, as we just see with the G20 and B20, we're really going to have to step up our game and enable more people to get through the education system so that we enable new industries, Lulu. So that I think the biggest issues is access, it is affordability, and making sure that what is being delivered is future fit and fit for purpose for those people to get careers, and that will transform the continent, really.
And just looking at access in terms of, apart from access and accessibility, and affordability, we really do not have enough universities. Apart from the fact that there are private universities that are here, but when it comes to public education, we don't have enough universities. What does government need to do to ensure that there are enough universities for the number of young people that go through the matriculating system in the country?
Thank you, Lulu. And that is the right question. But the reality is that government can't do it. So I think we need to realize that the future is collaboration and not competition. And even now in South Africa, more than 20% of all capacity for first-time people that enroll for the first time is being provided by the private higher education sector. We welcome the fact that in future private institutions, once the minister has published the regulations, that they could become fully blown universities. But I want to emphasize that we need to collaborate between the public and the private sector so that we develop a new joint compact, which should include designing curriculums together, helping people to register between institutions, sharing research facilities, and really building skills in STEM teacher training and health, and ensuring that there's seamless student mobility. And I think that that's a large part of what we wanted to communicate in this paper that we've put together, is that there is a model where we work together, because I don't think government, or for that matter, the private sector, can do it alone.
And just going back, Dr. Steenberg, to the issue of affordability. Yes, private universities seem to be expensive, but when you go back and just compare with the public sector universities, there isn't really much of a difference.
100%. There isn't really much of a difference. And if you look at the throughput rates and the probability of you succeeding in the public versus private, because the private have what I would call a high care type approach and really is fit for purpose and works much closer with industry, there's a much higher probability that you will complete your studies if you're in private higher education. And we realize that that is because the public system is constrained by its funding models, and that we can really explore new ways to do this. So I think it is a viable proposition, and we're seeing that more people are turning for their first-time education needs towards the private sector. And we also note that the public sector has, for the first time in almost a decade, set the intent to expand access through adding another 200,000 seats over the next 5 to 10 years. That's still very much not enough for us to achieve our enrollment targets as a nation. And we really need urgent funding reform. We really need to look at new models to fund students, because the existing system does not allow anybody really to grow in the right direction.
And just in wrapping up, one of the topics that was discussed at the recently ended G20 was education priorities. How quickly could we see South Africa and Africa integrate some of the discussions that came out?
Definitely. I think it's the B20 and the G20 really outlined that the leaders agreed to boost implementation of regional accords, the UNESCO Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications Concerning Higher Education, and that will really improve cross-country acceptance of our degrees. And for South African universities, including the private institutions, this G20 endorsement promises to enhance the global recognition of their qualifications, making it easier for graduates to have their degrees accepted abroad and facilitating academic collaboration and us building real cross-skills framework within Africa. And I think the recent moves in South Africa towards recognizing private higher education institutions as full universities, which is still in the making and still subject to ratification, is really, really exciting, because that will allow us to build the skills that we need for this. And also, it will give young people experiential learning opportunities, which I think is very, very important. So to your question, I think it won't take a million years. We're moving in the right direction, and I think it will take public and private working together, and that's what we've proposed through this EDUVOS white paper.
Well, Dr. Steenberg, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you so much.
That was Dr. Riaan Steenberg, EDUVOS Executive Director, joining us on the line. It is 12:53 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. And join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
The Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, has concluded a 2-day official visit to Rwanda, highlighting deepening ties between Doha and Kigali. The trip comes at a pivotal moment, reflecting a growing economic cooperation and a shared commitment to peace, stability and sustainable development in the region. Qatar has also played a central role in mediating the ongoing crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Silvanos Karamera reports from Kigali.
Bilateral relations between Rwanda and Qatar have strengthened across key sectors such as aviation, security, hospitality and investment. Earlier this year, the Qatar government approved a draft agreement for mutual visa exemption, making travel easier for Rwandan citizens. Qatar's involvement is not purely symbolic. The two nations are already working together on tangible projects. Qatar Airways has resumed direct flights to Kigali, operating 4 flights a week, a move expected to boost both tourism and business connectivity. Adam Zikwizera is a journalist in Kigali. I asked him how he touts this visit by the Qatar leader to Rwanda.
This visit carries a great deal of political, economic and diplomatic weight. And this also marks a milestone in the growing partnership between Kigali and Doha. It's a very meaningful visit. Like for their side, they named it friendly visit. This is a very timely visit, as Qatar is a key mediator in the security issue between the M23 and the DRC government.
In addition, Doha is heavily involved in Rwanda infrastructure investment. Qatar is holding a 60% stake in Rwanda's upcoming Bugesera International Airport, a project that could make Kigali a major regional aviation hub. Security cooperation is another pillar of this growing partnership. Rwanda and Qatar recently signed a memorandum of understanding to boost capacity building between their internal security forces. As he concludes his trip to Kigali, the leader of state of Qatar has left for Kinshasa, a move that some analysts believe aims at trying to defuse the ongoing crisis in the Great Lakes region, specifically between Rwanda and the DRC. I spoke to James Munyaneza in Kigali, a political analyst and senior editor.
I think it is on record, it is well known that Rwanda and Qatar maintain a very solid bilateral ties across different sectors of the economy. The two countries have been working so closely. As a matter of fact, yesterday, one of the engagements that the two leaders were involved in is the President Kagame, taking the emir of Qatar to his farm just outside of Kigali, where he gifted him with the Inyambo cows. And in our culture, this culture, Nyambo gifting a cow to this is normally done to a friend, a very good friend for that matter.
And lastly, we also understand that since June there have been some push or calls for this matter for the two presidents, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda and the DRC President Felix Tshisekedi, to meet. They were supposed to be meeting in Washington around June, but so far this meeting has not materialized. So do you think the leader of Qatar, having been coming to Rwanda and finally leaving for Kinshasa, do you see this meeting happening soon, or is it possible? Or in your opinion, what is likely to happen after the visit of the leader of the state of Qatar?
I believe that the visit by the Emir of Qatar will go a long way in helping to create a conducive environment for these leaders eventually to meet and whatever arrangement, let's say in this case, the Washington process, to finally reach a settlement, a political, peaceful settlement to the crisis.
Again, according to Ali bin Hamad Al Aida at the Qatari embassy in Kigali, the Emir's visit reflects the vision of the state of Qatar, one of openness to Africa and a desire to expand partnership based on trust and common interests. Silvanos Kalemera, reporting for Channel Africa in Kigali.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
And that's how we wrap this Monday on Africa Update. Thank you for joining us today. Continue with us on all our social media platforms, and let's do this again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Celebrate generosity. Celebrate you. Channel Africa. Life with gratitude. Visit our new website or download our new app today. SABC News. The African Perspective.
Looking at your latest news this hour, vote counting has gotten